let's get going.
Great. I see that we've already got some friends in the attendee list. There's apparently someone that Monique you used to work with at Wells. My name is Lisa Beth Lentini Walker. I am thrilled to be here today with Monique Maddox. I was one of the co-founders, or I am one of the co-founders of MentorCore, along with my dear friend Dan.
Or Voss was. Do you have something to tell me?
Right.
I Lise, great to see you again. Thanks. I'm Dan Ayala. Welcome everybody, and welcome Monique. Really excited to have this discussion. Um, you know, well, I guess I'll let you introduce yourself. Monique, tell us a little bit about yourself.
For sure. I'm Monique Maddox, and I actually am an owner and founder and investor. I'm an owner in several companies, and I currently found and manage Micromade Technologies, and we do several things in the wireless, information security, and program management space. So happy to be here.
Great. And I met you years ago at Carlson Wagonly Travel, where we were working together. But this month we're celebrating a couple of things, right? We're celebrating Security Awareness Month. And what better way to celebrate security awareness than to highlight some of the women in cyber? And you are one of our very special guests to talk about that. MentorCore is a community for people in compliance, security, risk space where we can have candid conversations, connect with each other, and help each other grow and develop. And Monique, you are one of my favorite people because you constantly inspire me to think about things differently. And so, again, we are so thrilled to have you here and to talk about all the amazing work that you're doing and what you've learned in the process. So tell us a little bit about why Rewire Not Retire.
Sure. I have a short presentation. I can jump into it, and we can
Yeah,
go from
let's
there.
let's do
So
that.
let's do that. All right. I will share my screen. I promise I won't bore everyone here with all of the details, but let me know if you can see my screen. Here we go.
There we go.
All right. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great. Rewire, not retire. So this is how my brain works, and hopefully I can share a little bit with all of you about how to rethink the future. So as I said, I'm Monique Maddox, owner of Macrame Technologies, a couple of wine and spirits, not necessarily wine, but spirits industry as well. Investor in the Coven here locally in Minneapolis and St. Paul, two locations, as well as Fruitful Fertility, which is a fertility mentorship program and application. Also a trustee, board member, and advisory committee member for several organizations. So my church here locally, as well as the Georgetown University 272 Descendants Association, as well as another organization that I'm currently representing on racial healing and truth awareness, and an advisory committee member for the University of Minnesota's Innovation Center. So at the Technology Center, so the Office of Technology Commercialization, where I advise upstarts, people doing research at the university on how to fund their businesses and how to get them off the ground. Also a spouse, a mother of two. I have an adult child, a human, as well as a teenage fur puppy. So those are the mother of two that I am, and then a caretaker of two. So I'm currently caring for my mother, who is elderly, and my brother, who's elderly. So I'm a busy person. And lastly, I'm an engineer by trade and an entrepreneur at heart. So that is who I am.
Well, then you're in the right place.
You absolutely are in the right place. And one of the things that we like to talk about is allowing everybody to bring who they truly are in their total, right? And I'm constantly in awe of all of the things that you have managed to pull together in your life, and you're living out all of your passions and dreams. And it's so amazing to chat with you and be inspired by you.
It's the only way I know how to live. So I take all of my lived experiences and I bring them in and figure out what works and I keep it, and what doesn't work, I throw it out. So I'm always reinventing myself. So I don't know if you want to call me a chameleon or what. Sometimes I say that, but it's really all about, purpose. So I'll go right into that. So I now start with this quote. Purpose is not a destination, but a journey and a practice. And this came from the Greater Good magazine. It's a publication that the University of California, Berkeley put together. Has really good content on it. And it's sort of a take on an Amish quote. The purpose is not the destination, but the journey itself. And I think it's more than just a journey. It's that practice. It's the little bit more about it, because if you really think about it, as a teenager, you're trying to figure out, what is my purpose? What am I doing? What's my life like? And then as you get into your, I would say, midlife years, your early adult life, then you say, okay, I think I know what my purpose is. Now let me go and try to live that out and try to be busy doing whatever we've declared that purpose to be. And as you transcend through life, it changes. So, you look at things and you say, wow, we come to a crossroads. What do we do next? Is this what I really want to do for the rest of my life? And so I really take a lot of things that I've done in my life with Agile Scrum practices and principles, and I inspect and adapt a lot of what I do. And I'm just transparent with myself. This is what I'm doing. Is this what I want to do? And I look at that and I change it. I'm constantly in this cycle of inspect and adapt. That's why I say, it's maybe I am a chameleon, because I'm always trying to look at what I do and what I'm not doing and what I could do better. And so it's a lot of my technology background that I put into play when I do that. And I will say, go
was
ahead.
this a trait you always had, Monique, or is this something that you took on either environmentally or because you were in technology? People often find it hard to take that kind of feedback and bring it into themselves.
Yeah, I think I was always a good listener, and that's what started it. I was always listening and taking in information and saying, does that make sense? Is that the right thing to do? What would I do differently with that information? And so I think I've always had that, a lot of introspect, and it really goes back to a lot of my childhood and my faith bringing up. I was really always very reflective and meditating and thinking, maybe also because I grew up almost as an only child. As I mentioned, I have an elderly brother. So, I was the forgotten person that my mother didn't think she could have. And so, through that, I got a lot of experiences from older people, and that made me wise in my early years as well. So, I think I've always been that way. And technology really just took me and said, here are the Scrum principles. These three things are empirical to Agile Scrum practices. And that's where I was. And I realized, you know what, I'm doing the exact same thing in my life that I am doing in work. And how phenomenal is that, that I'm able to apply my work life to my personal life.
Well, it becomes part of who you are, right? In such a pivotal way that it's just the way that you live.
Yeah, absolutely. And where I am today and all the things that you see that I've done, those aren't my first things. I've constantly done this. So when I look back, I became a vegetarian probably 13 years ago. When my daughter was in middle school, she says, I think I want to be a vegetarian for a week because my friends are doing it. And so maybe this is something I want to do. And I said, okay, well, I'll try it with you. Well, I read about being a vegetarian. I thought this isn't a good thing for a kid, but, from a health perspective, maybe it's something I want to do. And so I said, I'll try it. So again, let's try something, see if it works. Let's take it out if it doesn't work. So I eliminated meat from my diet 13 years ago, just kind of on a trial effort, and haven't looked back.
Wow.
Well, it also then says, if you don't try something, you don't know if I have a 12-year-old. So, a lot of if you don't try it, how do you know if you like it or don't, or if you don't know if it doesn't work for you? you get that experience, and you know how to, you can then find the things that do work for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always trying, and there's nothing wrong with trying. You can try something as long as it's not going to kill you. I'm about trying some things within reason. And so these are small things I think I can try out. Even if I try to go back to meat, that's okay. I can do that. It's not going to kill me. So I'm all about trying things, but I really go back to this is about your purpose. When you look at your purpose in life, you really want to say, is this what I want to do? And maybe you've landed on it, maybe you haven't. That's where I was. I thought I was where I wanted to be, but I really wasn't satisfied, and so I kept going and kept trying more things.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the Tale of Two Orchids.
This seems like it's going to be a great story.
I learned a lot from my orchid, I will say.
My orchids always kind of ended up dying, so I'd love to know what you learned.
Yeah, mine did too. It looked like the orchid on the right for a very long time, for years and years and years. And so I said, I'd always go and see one of my friends weekly, and her orchid, she had the orchids as well. And I said, why is your orchid blooming? What are you doing differently to your orchid than I'm doing to my orchid? And she would say, well, as long as the leaves are green, just keep doing what you're doing. And I thought, but I want flowers. I want more. I want more than just green leaves that don't even look like they're growing. Tell me, what else can I do? And it really was about perspective. So it was a hard lesson for me. It probably took me 7 months to really learn this lesson throughout it. And I said to myself, wow, this orchid has taught me a lot. And it did. I really learned that these are two things that the two of us had. And what she did wasn't any different than what I was doing, but her journey was different from my journey. Her orchid's journey was different from my orchid's journey. And really what I learned through that was no two journeys are the same. I can't really just judge how my growth is based on her growth. And so while we look like we're the same, we're different, and our paths are different. And so I struggled with it. And at one point I said, I'm just going to not water my orchid because I want petals. I bought fake petals to put in. So it's upstairs still with fake petals, but no green leaves. But I'm like, okay, this is my orchid. But it really helped me to focus on, I'm not the same as the person next to me. And it takes me back to something my aunt told me years ago, and she depicted to me, she was a really successful person. And what I thought was a successful person. She was college educated. She had a great family life, what we would call married up in life. She was a leader in her work and her personal life. And I said, wow, her journey is different from my journey. We can't compare them to be the same. And so when I started my business, I reflected on that as well. And so everyone who's influenced me really have taught me that, it may look different, even though we're going down the same path. So don't let that dismay me. Yeah.
Really good insight.
Yeah. And it actually takes me back to something that Kira Newman, who the quote on the previous page, talked about, that the purpose is not a destination, but a journey and a practice. She really also said the same thing. It's not, your snippets of life are really between your young life as a teen, as an adult, and later on in life, it changes. And so you can't judge a book by its cover. And in this case, you can't judge an orchid just by how it looks. Mine was thriving, but I didn't like the way it looked. And so I keep going. So what I did in life, was I looked at all the things that I was doing, and I said, wow, there's a great opportunity for me to have strength in numbers. And so I went out and went through different paths of all of my experiences. And I had experiences in all 5 of these areas: data privacy, PCI compliance, third-party risk assessments, data governance, security scanning. And I said, wow, I have to figure out how to make this work, because these things are here to stay. And so I spent a year trying to be something that I wasn't. And I really realized after that year that, I could grow from one customer with one project to multiple customers with multiple projects. And now I cover all of these areas. All of these areas are things that I cover with multiple customers. And it really ties me back to, we can't rely on one single learning in life to grow and to make us grow. We have to find different ways of developing ourselves. And when I look at that orchid, it's the same thing. There are different ways we can develop and grow. And after COVID, we all know about preparing for a rainy day. So yeah, that goes unstated. So I like to say, in our business life, we need to have a minimum of 1 to 2 years of growth opportunity, so that we can allow ourselves to reinvent and revisit and figure out who exactly we are and what we want to be, so that we're not trying to go down a path that we're really not.
So let me ask a question.
Mhm.
In that year when you were working on all of this, did you have like a vision for what you wanted? Was it disheartening? How did you keep your eye focused on what the future was? Was it a lot of reflection, or was it how did that work?
Yeah. You know, I was trying to force it. And I said, I want to be this company that is going to do all of these things, all of the 5 boxes that you see here. And I'm going to just go out and tell everybody, you have to be PCI compliant. You have to secure your data. You have to be able to do third-party risk assessments. And people were looking at me like, we know, yeah, but that's not the top priority for us at this point. We would like to spend our time doing the things that are right in front of us. And those things aren't in front of us until we get hacked or until some event happens. And so what I did was say, okay, that's fine. You do that. I'm not going to force all of this on you. I'm just going to offer some services that I believe are critical and will allow you to see those things. And so we started with security scanning. And so we scanned a few applications and networks for companies. And then we told them, here's what you are not doing, and here's where you are exposed. And through that, they said, oh, well, we really want to hire you to continually monitor our systems for us. We can't afford a lot of the big things because it's a big budget item, we believe, but we don't know. So what we did was we're offering something that's more affordable, and they're buying it. And so we're what I was doing before, I was trying to force something that I knew people needed, but they couldn't see that they wanted. And so then I pulled back and said, you know what? I'm just going to offer something really small. And then from there, we will grow into something that is larger than what you believe that you need.
I think, just to tie this back to mentoring, a lot of times mentoring relationships are challenged because as a mentor, you can see that there's all of these wonderful, things that the person that you're working with could be doing.
Mhm.
But if you bring them out all at the same time, it's way too overwhelming. So sometimes you just have to choose your moment. And that works in business and it works in relationships. And I think it's, it's really great to hear you talking about how you can have all the right answers, but maybe it's not the right answer at the right time.
Yeah,
You haven't
absolutely.
built up that, that relationship yet to where you can be like, hey, you got some spinach in your teeth. We're going to talk about that real quick. Let me help you with that.
And I think it's also endemic of people that have done these things and see the big picture may want to skip to, hey, let's start with the big thing and then work back to the small. But like you said, Monique, they're just not ready to have that discussion yet. So this is, it's really smart if you're going to start a business like this to figure out what will people actually buy.
Or even if you're in a new role, I mean, you can't start out with the biggest, undertaking right away. Sometimes you need to have those small successes and small wins first before you go with the big project, because, you have to build up internally, if you're in a company, that credibility over time.
Absolutely. I am always, I see the destination, and then I've always tried to drag people along with me to that destination. And sometimes they're not ready. And so I have to constantly remind myself, you know, everyone doesn't see things the way I do. And so let's let them go along. And so I will tease them along and bring them along. It's slower than what I believe they need to be going, but it's at the pace that they need. And it goes back to the two orchids. Every journey is different. They're not the same. And so I have to let people come, and I meet them where they are. And so that's the mentor note as well. Meet people where they are and then help them from where they are.
Was it difficult for you to take your head out of the thing you knew they should be doing and focus on the thing they want or are able to be doing? I guess to get out of your own way enough to be able to say, okay, fine, I'll give you what you're asking for, rather than that's not always an easy jump to make in our own minds as providers and strategists.
Absolutely, because as I said, I spent a year doing it. It's been a year of banging, and I gave myself the grace to be able to take that year. After 7 to 8 months of that, I thought, oh my, I think I'm going about this the wrong way. And I really need to just let this play out in the way it's going to play out. And so once I sort of pull back and let go, it started to flow on its own. It was almost as if I was trying to swim. I won't say upstream, but I was swimming, against the tide in a sense, and I needed to change the direction in which I was swimming. And so now we're swimming along the same vein, but it took me a while to figure that out. Even though, I practice it in my house all the time, I just have to sometimes pull back and say, okay, we're not ready for that. But that's a really hard lesson to learn. Takes a lot of maturity, I think, to get there too.
It is. And the ability to have the runway to be able to learn those decisions, learn those things along the way.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have a support group around you to allow you to be able to have that runway. And so I was grateful enough to have that opportunity to be able to do that. But now we're back on the track and things are moving along. So
good. Glad to hear it. I just have to say as well, I appreciate your being so honest and candid about it. Too often people bring out it was no problem, bravado, and
and that's not MentorCore.
No, and it doesn't.
MentorCore is like we it's unhelpful, and it yes.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I'm sitting here and I just sent Lisa Beth a message in chat and said, this echoes my own exact journey 100%. The same types of struggles, the same scoping questions. So it was just it's very refreshing to know that I wasn't the only one that went through this path. That's in the security space and others. And
not at all.
And it's just know that I appreciate hearing that, and I'm confident that others that are watching and listening to this will as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mentor a lot. So I do a lot of mentorship. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. So, I mentor outside of work and personal life as well. I mentor on the investment side, on the investment angel side, as well as with startups and other businesses. And so, for me, I have to realize, it's not easy for people who are starting up. And that's sort of how I actually got into angel investing, was because I was trying to start businesses that people weren't ready for. I started what I would call the predecessor to to Angie's List back in 1993.
Wow.
And it just we weren't ready for that. And so it was an opportunity for me to say, okay, we weren't ready. Let's try something else. And so then I would move on, inspect, adapt, and just being transparent and open with myself to say, okay, that's Angie's list. Great. Someone else took the idea. I don't mind. At least we have the service out there. But I got into angel investing for that same reason, because I felt like it was less of a risk for me. When we go back to risk assessment, it's less of a risk for me to start a business rather than to invest in a business. And so I do that to support other entrepreneurs who are looking to actually start up. And I tell them all the time, you're taking the greater risk than I am.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I will, I know we're just over halfway, but I do want to leave time for some more questions for people in the audience. But one of the things I do want to share now that we're in a mentor, because we're in a mentor session before we get to questions, something that I remember from many years ago, about how I got to where I am and why I started my business. When I was a part of that reflecting, I reflect back on my father, and his experiences. He was self-employed for most of my adult life. And that really drew me to being self-employed and being that entrepreneur at heart that I talked about. And it wasn't easy for my father. It was very hard. He would have work sometimes, and other times he didn't. So I remind myself of those things as well. His work was actually outdoors. So, on a snowy day in the Midwest, he wouldn't be able to work. On a rainy day in the South, he wasn't able to work. And so I have to remind myself, although the work that I do is mostly inside, there are rainy days and there are snow days that I have to give myself grace, to be able to just say, okay, I need to take a break, and maybe this is the break that I need. But he was a big influence on me. So I'll leave it to you.
Great advice. It's
Wow.
great advice, and one that's even harder to take harder for people to make themselves take over the past 9 months, as the worlds have blended in a way that taking time away is almost become mythical.
Right. Yeah. There's so many people who are like, I don't want to take vacation. I don't want to take time off, because what do? I don't have anything. I'm at home all the time. I don't really want to travel. Travel is kind of not really a big thing these days. And so I know that I've canceled some big vacations I've had myself this year. And so I've had to learn that it looks different. And so vacations these in 2020 to me look like, let's do a home project. Let's figure out what exactly we're going to do. Maybe we'll go camp outside or something. Let's do things differently that I wouldn't have done if I were able to leave the home and go and stay away for many, many years out of the country.
Right. Well, I did paint by numbers, and I'm going to do more of that because it was actually very enjoyable. And I know, Monique, you're up here in Minnesota, and we got an impromptu kind of break yesterday as we got 8 inches of snow, and then our power went out for like 5 hours.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So I was like, well, I could be mad that the power's out, or I could just say, you know what? Let's pull out a lantern, and this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did get coloring. So I did get a coloring book and my daughter's old crayons and pencil colors from when she was a young child really were not doing it for me. So I ended up having to buy some new fancy gel pens to paint, the coloring book. So I'm looking forward to spending the rest of the year coloring in my new adult coloring book. So.
Nice.
Oh,
is it wrong that I use my iPad and pencil to color? But I do. It's wonderful.
That's pretty neat. And Dan knows that I've been on his case to make sure he's getting time off for how many months now, Dan?
9 months. I'm good at making sure other people take days off. I'm not as good at it myself. I want to be, but just situationally, it's been hard to find the time. But I have committed that it's coming very soon.
And now it's recorded.
That's right.
So I'm going to replay this every couple of days for you. So I know that there are some questions. I have a couple. Number one, how do you get involved in angel investing? Like, I know that there are some people within our community who are thinking, hey, I would love to serve on a board. How does one do that? And this angel investing sounds pretty cool too. How do you get involved with both of those things?
Yeah, there's sort of an underground ecosystem out there that you have to figure out how to jump into. And that's what I did. I got on a circuit because no one introduced me to this thing. My first investment was with someone that I knew who knew someone who I'm like, oh, I've heard this person. And that person, I knew they were passionate about what they were doing. And so I said, I'll support their vision. And so it really was about me supporting. So I called them up and said, hey, I hear you're doing this thing. I'd like to get in on it. And they said, okay, well, let me tell you more about it. And here's how you get in. And then I met another investor, co-investor in that company. And that person actually said, I said, well, what are you doing? What did you spend your day doing? And they said, oh, I went over to this other thing and they were, I'm investing in them. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And I'll go over and talk to them too. And so that's what I did. And then I invested in that thing. And after that, I'm like, well, if I don't just know the people who are doing this, how do I get involved? And so I started going on the pitch contest circuit. So I started going to every accelerator and pitch contest that was around town and just meeting people and saying, I'm here. I'm maybe looking to invest in a company. Tell me more. I started getting more calls from people who had, I would say, ideas that weren't exactly fully thought out, but they were ideas. And so I said, well, I'll hear you out and I'll help mentor you along and tell you some ideas of what you need to do and what you don't need to do. And so I went through that process. And before I knew it, I was in the ecosystem. I was in that wheel. And people are emailing me and LinkedIn messaging me and calling me. I mean, I get so many people knocking at my door now saying, hey, I got this thing I want you to invest in. Why don't you invest in it? Along the way, I did join an angel investment group called Pipeline Angels. And through Pipeline Angels, I invested in, that's how I invested in Fruitful Fertility. And so we looked at some other businesses. I built an investment thesis at that time and figured out what it is I specifically wanted to invest in to make sure that I supported that. And so I try to diversify my portfolio doing that. But angel investing really was a way for me to start out by diversifying my retirement.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, you're on a number of advisory boards and boards. How did you get involved with those?
Again, it was this whole cycle of this ecosystem. I actually, I met someone who wanted to tell me about their business and they wanted me to actually join their business. And I said, I'm not interested in your business. That's not what I do exactly. And I don't think I'm a good fit for that. And so they said, well, I want you to meet someone else who is where you could learn about other businesses. And so I joined. That's how I got introduced to the University of Minnesota's angel investment group there. There's a University of Minnesota investment group that is done through the Venture Center. And so I learned through them about different groups that I could join. And through that, I met other people who were in the angel investment community. And so it just kind of spiraled from there. That's what I would say.
Wow.
So let me ask you, you've made the change. You were in large enterprise, you were in corporate world, and you are an entrepreneur at heart. The move from existing structure to your own structure is a rather significant and startling one, or can be. It's just so night and day different. Do you have any thoughts or advice as people are considering making that kind of a change in terms of things to consider about no longer being part of a large enterprise? And then the possibility of the road back. Many people fear, if I leave and don't stay in this world, that I might never be able to go back to that if this doesn't work.
Yeah. I that's a great question because I actually, I made the leap. I walked in one day and, I'd been contemplating leaving and doing my own business. I was going to be a franchise owner. So I had done all this due diligence around owning this particular franchise. And I said, okay, I think I'm going to do it, even though there was one thing that I really was wanting to wait to figure out. And so with that, I said, I'm going to go ahead and leave this job, and I'm going to figure that thing out after I leave, because what I'm doing today, it doesn't really match who I am. And I would always go into the office and say, wow, this doesn't feel right. And it takes me back to a place that I was back in 2004, I think it was. And I had the guy who owned the company, he had left Ernst & Young and he had started his own consulting company, and I was working there. And he would always say, look at those people across the hall. Their faces are just so sad. If your face ever starts to look like that, I don't think you guys should come here anymore. I don't think this is a place for people who are just not happy. And so, the men and women of people and all the femme and non-binary people that I work with were like, okay, that makes sense. And so I started to feel that on my face as I went into the office, and I thought, this isn't who I am. And so I walked in one day because I was actually long hours, and because I was working in a global company, and so I was working from like 4 a.m. some mornings till midnight, trying to get other time zones, and it just really wasn't working out. And so I decided, I don't think this is for me. I'm not going to do this long term. It's not going to work. And so I told my husband, I said, can you go out and go to this thing that I can go to? And so on my way to the office, I called and said, well, how was the breakfast? What did you learn in this breakfast that I couldn't go to because I had another priority meeting in the office? And he said, I learned you just have to do it. And I said, oh, okay.
Well, that was easy.
Right. Well, that's probably the answer to everything, actually.
And it's when it's coming from the person you need to be the support mechanism. It sure makes the decision a heck of a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he knew that I was going to go in and quit. But I said, okay. And I drove on into the office and I called my boss over in London and said, I don't think this is for me. I think I resign. And he's like, wow, I'm kind of shocked. I'm like, I'm sure you are. But, he's
I
like,
didn't
well,
even realize it till about an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just said, this is it. He says, wow, so how much notice are you giving me? I said, I don't know. What do you need? And he says, well, will you give us 6 weeks? Sure, I can do that. I'll give you 8 if you want it. And he's like, okay. And I said, okay, will be 8, whatever. I don't have anywhere else to go. I just know that
people don't receive
I just
that
know that
answer.
I'm not staying here, right?
People aren't yet ready to receive that answer. Where are you going next? Not sure yet. I'm figuring it out. I'm start something, see where it goes.
Yeah.
How long can you give me? Can you give me at least 2 weeks? Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you 2 weeks.
They're not ready to get that answer by and large.
No. So I gave him 8 weeks, and he came back over the course of that time and said, did you change your mind? And I said, no, I haven't changed my mind. But along the way, just to kind of get to answer your question, along the way, I have, in all of my client experiences, I have been offered an opportunity to come back as an employee. And so those opportunities present themselves. You just have to just not force it and just let it happen. And so, I've gracefully said, I used to say no all the time. I would always say, no, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. And then finally I said, I'm going to make this about you, not me. So you tell me if you can meet my number. Here's my number that I need to come over. And if you can make that work for me, then yes, I will join your organization. And usually the answer is, I can't do that. And I said, well, that's why I was saying no. But now that you've put it on you, it's you now, not me. So
actually, that's a really good technique. And I know that, I've had a lot of conversations with owners of consulting firms in cyber or privacy or compliance. And that is one of the big issues. And it's one of those things that tests you as to whether you really want to own your own firm, or whether you really are just doing this until there's another great in-house job. And it has always been a struggle to say, that's really not where I want to go. But I like your technique of saying, well, here's my number. If you can meet this number, then it's really their decision.
And then when they come back with the number, you win.
Yeah.
Right. If they came back with the number, then like the eye-popping number, that would be awesome.
Yeah, actually, yes, it would be. Yeah, let's do it.
Exactly.
And, it's not that I don't want to be here. It's just that I don't think that you could do what I would want.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Mhm.
So, everyone, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. I do have a couple more for you. As you're thinking about your purpose
Mhm.
and the journey to purpose, how do you go about making decisions about priorities? Because you have so many things, right? So you are so many things to so many different people. Like, it blows my mind that you're able to be an investor and a board member and run your own successful business and be a mom and a caretaker and mentor on top of all of that. How do you figure out how much to put in all of those buckets?
Yeah, I let the day decide itself. I do chart out the things that I think are the top priorities. And I work those out. And so I make sure that my checklist has, kind of back to days of Franklin Planner. We don't have those anymore, but you have your top priorities.
Dan still has one.
So Dan
A1.
Yeah, so you have your top priorities, things that you absolutely want to get done that day. And so I end my day by saying, these are the things that I absolutely have to achieve in the next day. And then I work through that. If there are other things, there are always things popping in. Luckily I haven't gotten a phone call during this to say, okay, I need you to do this. So, but those things come in, and I make sure I have enough time to slot those things in and be able to give to the people who need me to give, need me to do for them. So I'm constantly juggling. Some days it's harder than others, and some weeks I have to look and say, okay, there's something that has to come off this calendar, and it's going to be this particular thing, and even if it's only one thing this week, I got to get something off this calendar. And so I may do that and say, I absolutely can't make this today. So I did miss a financial advisory committee meeting last night because I had a big presentation I needed to get ready for a client. And so I'm like, I would be working at this until 2 a.m. if I don't just say I can't stop and go to that financial advisory meeting. And so I don't miss them often. I may not, now it's actually easier because I don't have to drive to a lot of places. I can just do a Zoom. So I pop into Zoom and say, here I am, I cut my commute shorter. And so I don't have to spend time driving over there, up in and out.
But and this is one of the things that I've noticed. I'm curious if you've seen the same, is that people are using that commute time, which is often good headspace time.
Mm-hmm.
My train ride when I lived in Chicago, my train ride time was my transition time. That
Mm-hmm.
was my my home to work life, my work to home mindset, and it was pretty compartmentalized. Drive was the same way. Without that, I find I'm filling in those hours with another meeting or another meeting and another something else work-wise, and not using them for my own better purposes. I have to really fight with myself to say, no, this is lunch is not, how are you keeping those boundaries intact?
Well, so what I built in place of that were walks. And so I am walking the dog a lot.
The dog is a very convenient excuse.
Dogs are a good path to that, definitely.
Yeah. So, even if it's just 5 minutes, let's go outside and walk up the street and back down. I take that 5 minutes and the dog is like, wait, we're not going on a 20 or 30-minute walk. And I'm like, no, not this time. I'll get you later. But right now I just needed to clear my head. And so I go and take the dog for a quick walk. Things that I didn't do when I was going into an office space or going from business to business or client to client. I wasn't able to do that, but those are the things that I need now. And I pop in one earbud so I can hear out of the other ear for cars coming. But I pop in one ear and I listen to a podcast while I'm taking the dog on a walk, because the dog doesn't care if I talk to him or not. So
Right.
I get to actually hear something new that's happening in that I'm interested in, as well as get my exercise, and the dog gets exercise, and we clear our heads. So
That's
I think it's
fantastic.
ironic that we're in an era where people are creating new content at an unprecedented rate of things I want to hear and listen and hear and see and learn from, and I have less and less time to do so because I don't have that drive time. So I like the walk. I started doing walking meetings. It's like the halfway house of what you just described. but
We're working on Dan.
the
We're
idea
working
of
on
just
Dan.
detaching fully is and listening to something fun is a really good it's a really good way to use that time.
I do walking meetings as well. So I used to do walking meetings when we were in the office. So I do one-on-ones on a walk, so you can get out of the office space. But now if I don't have to do a lot of talking during the meeting, then I will I'll take the call while I'm walking. And so that also helps me to get out and not miss what I'm doing and clear my head. Take your walks.
That's right. That's right. It's good for your heart and it's good for your mind. It's good all around. So I want to make sure that we have time to ask you our signature question, which
is please sign this.
No.
Different signature.
What is the best advice that you've ever received from a mentor?
I've had a lot of mentors. As you know, I've taken advice from a lot of different people. I'm constantly pulling and choosing things. But I would say that the one thing that sticks with me the most is stay focused on you. Stay focused on what you're doing and what your purpose is and what you want to do. And don't let others deter you or cloud that. And so if there's one thing about me, I'm laser focused. And so I stay, front and center. What is it that I need to achieve? And I make sure that I go down that path. And it may not be a straight path. It may be windy, but I'm going to get there. And so I'm always focused on that path. And so I would say, I learned that, stay on that path, because sometimes you look at an obstacle along the way. And I tell people that obstacle may be a mountain and it may be a rock, but until you get closer to it, you don't really know exactly what the hurdle is that you're facing. So those two things I would say would be the two things that really stick out for me, but I stay focused on me and don't worry about the rest of it, because it all comes out in the wash.
Are there any other metrics you use or baselines you use for yourself as to when it's time to get off that path? We talked about when your face looks like that. But is there anything else you ask yourself? You go into something kind of with an idea of how you want to leave it, but what questions are you asking yourself regularly to say, is it time to make a change?
It's what does success look like for me? So what is the end goal that I have in mind?
Okay.
I can be on a path for as long as I want. And then if I get to where I'm thinking, well, is this right or not? Then I put up that metric. What does success look like? What do I want my end to be for this? And so then I charge toward that, and heads down, going toward that until I can find something else. So,
And we got a great question in from one of our listeners. Would you say that your laser focus is what makes you unique and sets you apart from others? And if not, what is it that makes you unique?
My laser focus probably is one of the things that makes me unique. And other people are driven as well, but I am definitely self-driven to to just go out and just, if there's something I want to achieve, I'm gonna achieve it, and I stay on that path. If you don't have that same, or don't know if you don't have that same, or don't know if you have that same drive, then I would say trial it. Trial it in a small way, and set a metric for yourself and see if you can achieve it. if you can, make it a small metric and then make it a bigger metric and make it a bigger metric, because those are things that I do. I may have a short-term goal and then a longer term goal, but along the way, I have some toll gates that I'm looking at to say, is this where I want to be? Personally, I have quarterly, this is really odd, I would say, but I have quarterly meetings to determine whether I'm meeting the goals that I have. So I've set some goals and I say, let's see where we are. Are we making that? What do I need to do to adjust? So
Are
again,
these like self checks? Like this is like, good morning, Monique. Are you meeting this goal, or is this like something that's facilitated with somebody else in your life? Like, tell me more.
yeah. So I do drag my husband into this.
Oh, there you go. So it's an accountability partner,
There's
kind of
an accountability
methodology.
partner. Yes. And he's driven in a different way. He doesn't have the same, measures of success that I do. And so I'm like, well, let's have a discussion. What are your retirement goals? And he's like, I don't know, maybe just to
retire.
Live life comfortably. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Let's figure out, let me help you along the way to figure out, what does live life comfortably mean? Because I'm thinking legacy building. I have a list here of things that I want to do and achieve.
Beach, pina colada machine, and a steady stream of books.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's see, what does it take to get us there? And so we actually quarterly, we go through some checks. And we did this, and I think back on it, I drug my daughter through this years ago, where we would have family board meetings. And I would say, okay, you're responsible for the, budget. Tell us where we're doing on the budget. And you're responsible for entertainment, what type of entertainment you want to do. And you're responsible for food and dinner. And how do you see food and dinner going this month, and anything you change? And so we just kind of alternate that so she could get some experience in a way.
That's really ingenious. I like
until
that.
they figure out deficit spending.
Yeah. Yes. She didn't pick that up, Jeff.
No, that's a phenomenal way to bring accountability, to share accountability, and teach up these topics. It's great.
But actually, I think it might work really well in a team that, I've done things where like different members of the team were responsible for different things, and you have meetings, but we didn't really call it board meetings or anything like that. I like it in the family context.
Yeah.
And to your point about continuing to set metrics and grow and develop, I know we have another MentorCore event coming up in November that's about how you design your life in every age and phase up until 100. So I know that's something that we're going to be talking about as a community going forward, and I'm so thrilled that you brought it up into this discussion as well.
Well, that's perfect. We'll have a continuation of this in another session.
That sounds fantastic. Well, do you have any more questions, Dan? Because I think that I've asked the ones that I have.
I don't. I'm just very grateful that you were here, Monique, and thank you for sharing all these great insights. And as I said, personally, it was nice to hear again some of the same kind of paths, some of the same kind of challenges. And those are, and I appreciate you sharing those with all of us as people perhaps make the same kind of move and get an expectation of what lies ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here, and if anyone wants to reach out personally, I'm happy to help you in any way. So
great.
Thank you so much, Monique. You are an inspiration every time I talk to you, and we couldn't be more thrilled that you were willing to share your time and your talent with MentorCore.
Great.
Thanks to everyone for joining live, and if you're watching on the replay, thank you for viewing there as well.